Europa FM. Pe aceeași frecvență cu tine.
This is your first time in Romania?
Yes, it's the first time. I'm very happy to have a first time here.
Have you had the time to see the buildings, the city, at least Bucharest?
No. In reality, I came with my wife, and it happened that I've not had so many opportunities to travel, not only in Romania, but in all the central part of Europe. So we thought that it would be the good time to do it. And so we have a small tour in Transylvania.
Oh, sounds interesting. Do you know something about Romania?
I know from the history, and I know because I have some friends in Italy, but not so much, frankly speaking. And to go slowly toward the subject, this is a problematic because not only don't know about Romania, but I don't know about all this area. So when we talk about the topic that we are supposed to talk about, social innovation, the word social is related to the characteristic of a society. So even though I think that something we will discuss afterward that we can call social innovation is happening wherever in the planet for several reasons, the way in which it happened could be very diverse. And so I don't have now idea on how it's happening here.
Yeah.
So I have to talk as a kind of UFO, fall down from the sky here, and being totally naive in relation to the sensitivity that are specific of this place. And for what regard myself, given that I'm very curious, hoping to have feedbacks and maybe to go back with some more information and sensitivity about what is happening here.
Now that the Romanians can read your book in Romanian,
yeah,
they will have a different view on what social innovation means.
Yeah.
But before reading your book, what is actually social innovation?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's say it's something that always existed. And it's when one person or a group of persons invent a way to solve a problem of everyday life. So the problem could be related to how to take care of the kids, or how to organize the elderly, or how to organize the movement from the point A to the point B, or how to share and have some relationship with your neighborhoods, or even now more and more about the food, how to have a relationship with food that is more toward organic and local food, or even now toward work. There are very innovative ways of organizing the way to work, both intellectually, the co-working space, or also in the manufacturing with the fab lab makers, etc., etc. So there has been a vast area in which people find a way of doing things. And afterwards, sometimes this way of doing things become quite successful and spread in the society, and in the past some of them became normal. So it always happened because people has always had a certain creativity, a certain capability of organizing things. The problem, unfortunately, has always existed, and so the motivation to do it and the capability to do it always existed. If so, why we have not only me and my group and my friends, but many people everywhere in the world, and in particular in Europe, since 10 years, in some way focused on this term, social innovation. And I can assure you that it became, at least in certain layer, a kind of buzzword that is used even too much, as every concept that has success is used a lot. And the motivations are that who studied afterward social innovation discovered that this attitude of inventing way of doing and making real in the reality goes by waves. Also the technical innovation goes by waves. So you have not always the same ratio of innovation. There are moments in which many different inventions generate a new wave of innovation. and has been studied for 1 century about the technological innovation and the different waves from the early industrialization toward the nanotechnologies today. So has been observed that the same is also for the social innovation. There are some moments in which, for some reason, much more people start to invent way of doing things in a different way and find a way to make them real. And for some reason that maybe we can see afterwards, we are now living in one of those moments. So we are in the middle of a big wave of social innovation that is the result of the transformations of the societies and the penetration in the societies of the new technologies, especially the digital ones.
What is the best way to test a project, an idea? Sometimes social innovation means a lot of money and resources, and sometimes it means only implying the local community in doing things differently.
Yeah.
How you can test your idea?
Well, you can test only in some way through practice. I always say that it will be the same. I don't know if the audience know better technological innovation, but let's say until 2 decades ago, when you said innovation, people was talking about technological innovation, that at the beginning as an inventor that make a first prototypes, and after the prototypes consolidate, and afterward maybe they become the new objects.
Mass production.
The production. So in that it's called the S curve, because at the beginning there the invention is difficult and afterwards it's time to boom and is stabilized. You cannot know if something will be really successful until you don't do it. So this is valuable both for the technological innovation and for the social innovation that we are talking now. So it's very difficult to say at the beginning what will happen. And what you said is very cute, I think, but I have an answer that I think the social innovation following the curve of maturation normally start with zero budget. So the beginning of the story do not ask for real investments, if we consider the social resource that are bought by the people, so the creativity, the intelligence, the energy, the attention, the time of the people. So if people put something, they can organize something in a certain way. Afterward, if this idea seems to be good, it could be implemented with new technology that help it. So coming here, I was talking with my colleague and friends about something that she told me that is very well known here, that is BlaBlaCar. So BlaBlaCar is a kind of advanced hijacking. And the traditional one was done with people on the street and doing the signal and hoping that people stop. At a certain point, a group of people started to organize themselves with a telephone, sending letters, talking at the bar, see you tomorrow, and creating the group of people that 4 or 5 go in the same car from the village to the office or to the city, or from the city A to the city B. So it can be organized without specifically advanced technology, even though a car, a telephone, and even a pencil are technology too. So it's not that one was not technologically based, because everything human beings do is based on some technology. But it was considered such a normal thing that you say, okay, zero budget, because something that you have. At a certain point, somebody observed that group of people tend to group together and to make something that's very clever, given that in a car you can space for 5 people, why don't you fill the car? And they organized, now I make a jump. Now you have the platforms that permit, the digital platforms that permit to people to meet, to exchange.
Create a schedule.
So create trust. That is one of the most important things that the platform can do. And of course, now if you look to the BlaBlaCar as it is now, it is an investment. Somebody put a lot of money. But the beginning of the story was people
just finding a way to communicate.
Finding a way to communicate and go together. Now, I use this example just because we were talking about this 5 minutes ago. I know that it's well known, but all the examples that I can mention, and I can mention, depending on the time, I can mention many others, are like this. We say at the beginning you have some heroes. We call it with this name, social heroes. So somebody that say, you know what, we can do it, and put energy, time, willing, attention, etc. to make it. But afterwards, given that the heroes cannot be heroic forever, progress can be substituted by some systems, some technologies that can help to do it, even though you are not heroic so much, even if you're in a more normal life and you simply need to go from here to another place tomorrow morning.
What do you expect from your book? Some examples or something that we can apply also here in Romania in our lives?
Yeah. Well, I think that all the issues that we are talking about can be applied in inverted comma because, as we said at the beginning, it's so embedded in the society that you can translate what in our language we call the service idea, so a kind of scheme of how and why things works. But afterward, when you bring it back down to the reality, it could be totally diverse. So I could mention this one, we talk about transportation and blah, blah, car, but we could talk about something related to food or something related to elderly. There are some basic idea. In the case of this case of transportation is why don't we find a way to have 4 or 5 people in the same car? That is so logic. And in the case of, creating link in between people living in the city and people living in the countryside, farmers living in the countryside, they call community-supported agriculture. The idea is the same, but you can imagine if the same idea is done in Italy, in the United States, or in China, and there are a strong movement of community-supported agriculture in China, it's totally diverse. So the idea is the same. It's a win-win solution for the citizen and for the farmers. So they win the both. But the way in which is the mentality in general and about food and about work and about relationship between the countryside and the city is different if you are Italy, United States, Romania probably, or China. So you can try to take the idea and psychologically be reinforced on the fact that something can happen, something can be done, and in some way be positive. Somebody is doing it. But at the same time, afterward, you have to find out your very specific way by yourself.
Because this year we are at anniversary time at Europa FM. We celebrate 18 years of existence in Romania, and we want to look at the future and think about the next 18 years.
Yeah.
Where do you see the world in the next 18 years? Where do you find yourself in the next 18 years? What do you think will happen?
For myself personally, I don't know if my hope of life is 18 years, but in any case...
We like to be optimistic, so...
I am optimistic, but this is another story for another interview. No, I have to tell it. I often say I am a professional optimist. Because if you are a designer, and I am a designer, co-designing this kind of things, but I am a designer, you have to find something on which to bet and say, maybe it could work. Nevertheless, I don't know how you see the story here in Romania, but the very general picture of the planet is a disaster in this moment. So if you tell me what is the most probable, unfortunately, I would say it's very probably that we are in a catastrophe by every point of view.
So soon, in 18 years? So,
I think that we are already in a catastrophe. I think that I'm old enough to remember when 30 years ago the Club of Rome said, if we don't do this and that, we will have a catastrophe. Okay, not everything was as they were saying, but... what you want more? The climate is changing. The biodiversity is reducing. the balance in between demographic population is a mess. The balance in between different peoples in the world is a catastrophe creating.
Do you find any fix or any solution?
No. I find, as I said, in my view, when you say what will be the future, you have not to tell one story. And we have to tell two stories. And there are a kind of, I think it's a fight in this moment, a battle in between, let's call it the main trend, that is very heavy and very inertial. And many people make a lot of money, and many people has the power, so they want to keep it in that track. And this track is also in this moment very complicated, because in the track there are two versions. There are the hyper neoliberalism and the hyper conservative that are against that neoliberalism, but they are at the end of the day worst of the others. And there is, in my view, my optimistic part, a story about what we call it social innovation. Let's call it social innovation. But for me, it's a kind of new civilization that is in some way emerging. And for my small experience, it's emerging worldwide. Therefore, and I could say I'm dealing with this kind of issue, this specific kind of issue since 15 years. And we have today results that would be unimaginable 15 years ago. So if you tell me only if I look like this to what we are doing, I could tell you a story of success. Not we, but these ideas. We have entire big cities that are governed by people that have more or less the same idea that I'm trying now to tell to you, that was unimaginable. There are some laws that are very interesting. But at the same time, the mainstream is even worse now than 15 years ago. So there are two kinds of curves. And
it's a different type of war, I imagine, from your words.
Yes. It's not. I'm not talking about the war of the country. Maybe it will happen, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a certain mentality that imagine that at the end of the day, everything has to grow. Every person has to be very fitting. Every person, the environment is not so important because it's a limit to our beautiful possibility to develop, and so on and so forth. And this goes on. Sometimes a little bit painted in green, in light green, but mainly is going on. And another growing group of people, a kind of boiling pot of what at the moment are small, relatively small ideas. Sometimes it became scenarios that are totally diverse what you imagine the individual in relation to the other, more collaborative, not only hyper-individualistic, different in relation to the link to the space, in some way recognizing the importance to be in a place and not to be wherever, different in terms of work, rethinking what is the meaning of work. That could be also a way to represent yourself. Different in terms of time, discovering that it's not only one fast accelerated time, but there is also an ecology of times where sometimes you like and it's good, it's part of your life to be slow. An ecology of economy, not to say that the market has to disappear, but you cannot solve all the problem with the market. So, and also you cannot solve all the problem with the state, as you cannot solve all the problem with the civil society or by the do-it-yourself.
So to summarize, we need to find a balance, to have a balance between everything in our life.
You first recognize it, because the other mainstream tend to eliminate. It's a huge, if it is so catastrophic in my view, is because it proposes a hyper-simplification of reality. Everything can be done in the same way. So everything can be solved by the market, by the privatization, by the commodization of the common goods, and do not recognize that we live also because we have common goods, physical and social common goods, that we live because also we like to have relationship between people, that work is not only making a job to have your money, but it's also a way to exist into the society and so on and so forth. So it's not only a balance of something that is so clear already, but it's to reintroduce a much more complex view into the reality and understand that solutions have to have this kind of complexity. So even when they are very small, they are very complex. If we would like to, now I don't want to insist on the BlaBlaCar, it's only because I know that many people know it, but there are hundreds of ideas like this one. If you want to really describe it, it's very complicated. Because it's not only to go from A to B using the same car, that is environmental is very good. So there is a good environmental motivation, there is an economical motivation, and there is also a kind of reestablishing of interaction. It's called BlaBlaCar, not by chance. And therefore, and also the motivation of the driver, you cannot only say he want to have half of the cost, because if you don't like to talk, you don't do it, even if somebody give you some money. So if you have to judge why people do it, of course, it has a very, in this case, the BlaBlaCar, it has also a very strong economical motivation. But if you really look what it has an economical motivation, it has an environmental motivation, it has a social or relational motivation that are equally important. It works because it creates a kind of ecological equilibrium in between them.
Thank you very much.
Europa FM. Pe aceeași frecvență cu tine.